Hey there, it's Kimberly here with Knit for Brains, and today we're going to be doing part 2 of how to make a garment without a pattern. So stay tuned. Let's see what we've got. Okay, so in part 1, we talked about getting ready to make a garment, and we're making a garment without a pattern, and we're just showing how you can do a garment just with basic shapes. Now, in this instance, on this pattern, I'm just using rectangles. I'm doing a series of 5 rectangles, 2 for the front, 1 for the back, and then 2 for the sleeves. So let's go ahead and take a look. I've finished the project. I finished all the pieces. I have sewed together the shoulders across the top, and I've sewed on the sleeves. So we're going to take a look at laying it all out and before we sew up the sides and what that's going to look like. So take a look. So before we start the final construction, let's take a look at all of our pieces. The best way to really understand what you're doing and to simplify the whole process is not to think about the whole garment, but to think about it in individual pieces. So when we're looking at making these garments, what we're looking at is actually a series of rectangles. You can see here that my front panels are 2 long rectangles. Here in the back, you can see is 1 long rectangle, and then my arms are 2 small rectangles. So going back to the original measurements, you want to make sure that your back piece is half of the total chest circumference. Reason being is this is going to be the back half, this is going to be the front half. So you know that you want the back half to be half of the total circumference. This is my back piece here. This is my front piece. Now, because these are the 2 front panels, these together will equal the same width as my back panel. Now, there is a little bit of a gap here in between, and that's because we're going to be adding in our button row. You can see, as I've talked about it, what I really want is a nice, clean, simple pattern. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to get fancy stitches with this. As you can see, this is just a really, really basic double crochet. It's an eyelet pattern, double crochet series with a stitch, with skipping a stitch. And as I've shown you in some of the other garments, this is just one pattern that you can do. You can do a series of 4 or a series of 2, or you can do double crochet, chain 1. It really depends on you. But what I'm trying to show you here is the design in the pattern is the simplicity of the pattern. I don't want to go crazy and super fancy with the pattern because I want the lines to be nice and clean. As you can see here, what I did with the color combination is whatever I wanted. I had a series of single of whites, and then I moved into the greens, and then again into the whites or the creams or whatever colors you want. That you can do as you want. As you can see here, I did some single rows of the different colors to add a little bit of a change. Because I wanted it to stay nice and clean and really kind of a classic look, you can see here that I just made sure that my colors, this is the inside, that my colors matched up. So as I seamed them together, all my colors are matching up, as opposed to having the greens and the whites going in different directions. The first thing you want to do when you're constructing your sweater or your garment is you want to line up your back to your front. So the first thing that I did when I seamed this together is I seamed the back across the top with the front panels. I started from the outside and I worked my way in because I wanted to make sure that my outside lined up and that my colors were all lined up. So I made sure that my colors seamed together nicely. And then I also, because I had this nice pattern, it was really easy to make sure that everything seamed up together. Now, when you're using the seaming, you can basically choose whatever color you used in your pattern to seam it together. But because I really wanted it to stay nice and clean, I only used the white, or the custard as it's called, for the cream parts or the custard parts. Then I switched over to the green, which I use for the green parts. So I did do a little extra step here in changing the colors as I went along, but I really wanted it to be nice and clean, and you'll see what I mean as I flip it over here in a second. So once again, the first thing I did was I seamed together the tops coming from the outsides, moving in. Now I know how much space, how many rows I need here in my center for my button column. Once this is done, then you sew on your sleeve triangle. So here's my sleeve. It was made in one big triangle. The way that I made sure this was even is once my shoulder seams are attached, I basically folded this over, the sleeve over. I attached it to where I knew the shoulder seam started. So that was my front half. Folded it over, made sure everything was nice and easy. I pinned it in place here and also back here. Then as I opened it up, all I had to do was to seam it from one side to the other. And I know that it's nice and even here. I did the same thing on the opposite side, but again, here I'm attaching it to the custard, so I used the custard color. And then over there, I attached it to the green. Now I did use the custard color, but that's okay because I was attaching it to the custard as well. So you could have used either color here. I chose to use the custard. You're not going to be able to see those stitches here. In something like this, you definitely want to use the matching color because otherwise you would start to see that cream coming through. So this is basically all stitched together. And again, like you can see, the sleeves are triangles, the front panels are rectangles. Front panels are rectangles, the back is one big long rectangle, and then the sleeves are rectangles. From here, I'm going to do a very simple single crochet right down here through the center. I'm not going to do a double crochet because I want the denseness of the single crochet to come through here. So once we do the button panels, I'll show you that as well. And then I'm also going to add a collar. So let's go ahead and flip this over and see what it looks like. This is going to be the outside. So as you can see, we've got really nice clean lines. It's going to be a really clean classic look. You can't see the stitching, and I'm going to block this when it's all done so it'll be even better. There you go, and then you just pull this out. But again, it's just a series of rectangles. It's a great first pattern piece if you're really just trying to understand how to do it. The important part here was understanding the color work, matching up your lines, and then once again, I'm going to do a single crochet all down in here to do my button rows. But here you can see it's nice and clean up here. The seams, the colors, all come together really nice. So you got the back to the front, and it's just one nice continuous color all the way through. So once we finish this part, we're going to add the button row. We'll show you how to do that. And then we're going to add the collar. And then what I'm going to do is also add a nice finishing, just a single crochet all along the back here. And then all the way around, just to give it a nice finishing touch. Once that is done, what we're going to do next is we're going to sew up the sides. So as you can see here, this is the sleeve. And I'm going to sew up my seams on the sides. Now this was an extra large size. So again, we talked about the standard sizing charting for when you're making a garment, that there is that standard size. But you might want to wait on the sleeves just to make sure that the arms, because some people are a little bit bigger in the arms and things like that. So I'm going to wait on those arms that they're at the top. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to seam up the sides here. I'm going to do it on the inside, but I'm going to be using the green. And then over here on this side, I'm going to be seaming up the side, and I'm going to be using the cream. But I'm only going to seam up to the armhole here, and I'm going to stop because I want to make sure that these arms are going to fit for my recipient, for my person here. But this is how, and you can see how it's really starting to come together. Very, very, very simple design. Really clean lines. So it doesn't have to be difficult. But it's got this nice, clean look to it with these stripes that are going all the way through. Really, really loving the way that this is coming together. All right, so there you have it. We got part 1 and we got part 2. So now The next part is we're going to finish the arms once we get the final measurements to make sure it's going to fit my recipient, aka my son, and then we're going to go ahead and give it a once over. So if you like this, please go ahead and like and subscribe this video, share it with your friends. If you're not quite ready to make a garment yet, that's okay. Just go ahead and tag it and, and bookmark it for your library to check out later. But this is part 2 of the 3-part How to Make a Garment Without a Pattern. Thanks so much for watching. This is Kimberly with Knit for Brains, and as always, I'll see you soon.